You are a cartographer, a map maker for the great and powerful authority. Your life is measured in light years and parsecs. You chart the darkness between worlds, giving it names and numbers, making the infinite seem small and controllable. Your office is a sterile white cube. The only window looks out onto the metal skin of Apex Station, a city adrift in the cold void. The air smells of recycled oxygen and faint ozone. It is the scent of order, the scent of control. You trace pathways for massive transport ships. You plot routes for patrol craft. Your work ensures the authority's grip remains absolute. A network of light stretching across the known galaxy. Every star is known. Every anomaly is catalogued, or so you believed. The signal arrived without warning, a whisper in the data stream. It was not a request for a shipping lane. It was not a distress call. It was something else entirely, something impossible. It pulsed on your main display, a ghost of a signal, faint and ethereal. Your systems flagged it as an error. A sensor ghost, a data reflection from a distant supernova. But you knew better. You had seen every kind of error before. This was different. This signal had structure. It had intelligence. It was a map. The data flowed into your console, not as code, but as light. It bypassed your firewalls as if they were not there. It assembled itself on your screen. A cluster of stars bloomed into existence. A constellation that did not exist. You ran a cross-reference. Then you ran it again. The authority's star charts are perfect, the product of centuries of exploration. Every sun and every dead rock is accounted for. Yet here they were, a dozen stars in a perfect spiral, in a sector listed as empty void. Your heart hammered against your ribs. This was not just an error. This was heresy. To suggest the authorities' knowledge is incomplete is a crime, a thought crime punished with silent efficiency. People simply disappear. You could delete it, erase the signal, and pretend it never happened. Go back to your quiet life of numbers and lines. Go back to the safety of the known. But you are a map maker. The unknown is a siren song you cannot resist. It was probably just a glitch. A really, really convincing glitch. You told yourself this as you isolated the signal. You routed it to a private server, a little digital lockbox you kept for personal projects, and other, less authorized curiosities. The authority preaches absolute knowledge. They discourage curiosity beyond approved parameters. They say it leads to chaos. They say it leads to dissent. They might be right. But a map of impossible stars, that was a puzzle too tempting to ignore. A little peek wouldn't hurt. A quick look at a place that shouldn't be. It was like being told not to think about a big red button. Suddenly, it is the only thing you can think about. Your finger hovering just over the surface. You worked for hours, ignoring the automated chimes for meal breaks, ignoring the calls from your supervisor. The phantom stars held you captive. Their light seemed to pull you in, promising secrets the authority wanted buried. The deeper you looked, the stranger it became. The stars were not just points of light. They were ancient, older than any known star system. They hummed with a strange energy, an energy your sensors could not classify. This was not a glitch. This was a message, an echo from a place beyond the authorities' reach. And it had come directly to you. The workday ended. The lights in your sector of the station dimmed. A soft hum replaced the bustle of activity. Apex Station was going to sleep. But you were more awake than ever before. You stood up from your console. Your legs were stiff. Your eyes burned from staring at the screen. You stretched, the joints in your back popping. You decided to head back to your personal quarters, to try and forget the impossible stars. You walked through the quiet corridors. The station was a monument to efficiency. White walls, gray floors, and glowing blue strips for light. No article, no music. Nothing to distract from one's duty to the authority. It was home, or the closest thing you had to it. Your quarters were a small, clean box, a fold-out bed, a food dispenser, and a small sanitation unit. Everything a good citizen needed. Nothing more. The authority prized minimalism. It was easier to control people who owned nothing. You ordered a nutrient paste from the dispenser. The gray sludge tasted of faint chemicals and regret. A perfect meal for a citizen with a guilty conscience. You ate it without noticing the taste. Your mind was still on the phantom stars. You laid down on the thin mattress. You closed your eyes, willing sleep to come. But you saw only the impossible spiral of suns, a beacon in a sea of blackness, a place you were not supposed to know existed. Then you felt it, a change in the air, a subtle pressure against your skin. The faint smell of ozone grew stronger, the same smell from your office console when the signal first arrived. You opened your eyes. Your small room was no longer dark. It was filled with a soft, silver light. The light was coming from the center of the room. It pulsed gently like a slow heartbeat. A form was taking shape in the air. Lines of light crisscrossed and weaved together. It looked like a projection, a hologram, but it felt solid. It felt real. The air around it crackled with energy. Slowly, the light coalesced. It formed a sheet of what looked like dark glass. It was about the size of your hand. It hovered a few feet above the floor, and on its surface were the stars, the impossible stars from the signal. You sat up, your breath caught in your throat. This was not a projection. It was a physical object. The signal had not just sent you data, it had sent you a thing. A star chart made of solidified light and energy. You reached out a trembling hand. Your fingers hesitated just above its surface. To touch this, to even possess it, was a death sentence. The authorities' laws on unsanctioned artifacts were clear. Heresy was met with oblivion. No trial, no appeal. Just a quiet removal from existence. You remembered the stories they told children, tales of heretics who sought forbidden knowledge. They were erased from all records. Their families were reassigned. It was as if they had never been born. This was the authorities' mercy. And yet, the chart was beautiful. The stars on its surface swirled with a light that seemed alive. It was more real than any map you had ever created. It was a piece of the universe itself, held within your tiny, sterile room. You thought about the joke people told in the lower decks. What's the difference between a curious cartographer and a heretic? About 1 week. It didn't seem so funny anymore. Your fingers touched the surface. It was cool and smooth like polished obsidian. A faint vibration hummed through your hand. It was not a dead object. It was waiting. It was alive. The moment you held it, you felt a connection. A surge of information flooded your mind, not words or images, but feelings. A sense of immense age, a feeling of profound loss, and a deep, desperate hope. This was more than a map. It was a key, a relic from a forgotten age. Holding it was the greatest crime you could commit. But letting it go felt like a betrayal of the map makers who came before you. You hid the chart in a loose panel behind your bed, the same place you kept a forbidden book of old Earth poetry. The authority would never think to look there. They believed they had stamped out all such hiding places, all such thoughts. They were wrong. Sleep did not come that night. You laid in the dark, the chart's faint hum a secret whisper in your room. You were no longer just a map maker. You were a heretic, and your quiet, orderly life was over. The next day felt unreal. You walked the corridors of Apex Station. You performed your duties at your console. You plotted safe routes for cargo haulers. Everything was the same. But you were different. You were a keeper of a terrible and wonderful secret. The phantom chart was hidden in your room, a bomb waiting to go off. Every conversation you had was strained. Every time a security patrol passed, your heart seized. They could not know. But you felt as if the word heretic was branded on your forehead. You needed answers. The feelings the chart gave you, the age, the loss, the hope, were not enough. You needed data, facts, a location, a name, something to anchor this mystery in reality. The only place to find that kind of information was the deep archives, the authorities' central repository of knowledge. It contained everything, every shipping manifest, every planetary survey, every historical record. Most of it was classified far above your clearance level. Getting in would be difficult. Getting in without being noticed would be nearly impossible. The archives were protected by the most advanced security in the galaxy, digital watchdogs and lethal countermeasures. It was a digital fortress. But you were a cartographer. You knew the systems of Apex Station better than anyone. You knew its digital back alleys, its forgotten maintenance tunnels, its hidden data conduits. You had mapped them for your own private use, a hobby the authority would find highly suspicious. You planned your approach carefully. It was like plotting a course through an asteroid field. One wrong move and you would be obliterated. You would become another ghost, another person who simply ceased to be. That night, you did not go to your quarters. You went deeper into the station, down to the maintenance levels. The air here was thick with the smell of grease and hot metal. The clean white walls of the upper levels were replaced with raw, unfinished Durasteel. You found an old network terminal, a relic from the station's construction. Most people thought these were disconnected. You knew better. You had found a way to link them to the main network, a slow, almost invisible connection, a digital whisper. You jacked in your personal data slate. The screen glowed to life, illuminating your tense face. You began the slow, careful process of slicing into the archive's security. It was a delicate dance of codes and countercodes. Hours passed. The only sound was the hum of the station's life support and the frantic tapping of your fingers on the slate. You bypassed the first firewall, then the second. You were a ghost in the machine, a silent intruder in the heart of the authority. You finally broke through the last layer of security. You were in. The archives opened up to you. A universe of information, centuries of secrets. You felt a surge of triumph. You had done the impossible. You started your search. You looked for any mention of star science anomalies, unexplained energy signatures, phantom constellations, anything that could relate to your chart. The first few hours yielded nothing. It was like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach. Then you found it, a deeply buried file, encrypted with a cipher you had never seen before. It was old, centuries old. The file was designated only by a string of numbers. No name, no subject, just a lock on a digital door. Cracking this encryption was beyond your skills. It would take weeks, maybe years. But the file's very existence was a clue. It was hidden for a reason. And its location in the archive was linked to your search terms. You were about to copy the file's location. to study it later, when you saw it. A flicker in the system logs. Another user. Someone else was in the archives. Right now, here with you, your blood ran cold. It could be an automated security sweep, a digital custodian program. But the user's activity was not random. It was deliberate. It followed your exact search path. It was watching you. You immediately began to sever your connection, pulling your digital presence out of the archive, wiping your entry logs, covering your tracks. Every second felt like an eternity. Were they tracing you? Were security teams already on their way? The other user did not try to stop you. They did not raise an alarm. They just watched. A silent, unseen presence. A ghost in the data. You yanked your slate from the terminal. You were out. You leaned against the cold metal wall, your body shaking. You had found a clue. But you had also found something else. Someone else. Someone who knew you were looking. You ran back to the safety of the upper levels. The clean, sterile corridors no longer felt safe. They felt like a cage, and you were not the only one inside. The shadow was with you now, a constant, invisible observer. You had a funny thought. Maybe this was the authorities' idea of a 2-for-1 deal. You get caught for heresy and they find another person snooping around. A real bargain. The thought was not comforting. You reached your quarters, your mind racing. Who was the other user? An authority agent? A secret police officer building a case against you? Or was it someone else? Someone who was also looking for answers about the impossible stars. You felt a new kind of fear. It was not just the fear of being caught. It was the fear of the unknown player in this dangerous game. Your life was no longer your own. It was a piece on a board you could not see. The next morning, an announcement echoed through Apex Station. The voice was calm, metallic, and absolute. It was the voice of the station's central computer. It ordered all citizens to their designated work sectors. An unscheduled inspection was about to commence. This was unusual. The authority was built on routine. Unscheduled events were a sign of trouble, a sign that the order had been broken. Your stomach twisted into a knot. This was about you. It had to be. You stood at your console, trying to appear normal. You focused on your work, the familiar lines of star charts. But your hands were slick with sweat. You could feel the eyes of your coworkers on you. Or maybe it was just your paranoia. Then he arrived. He entered your work sector like a storm front. The air grew cold. The quiet hum of the office seemed to fall silent. He was an inquisitor, a rare and feared sight. Inquisitors were the authorities' ultimate weapon. They were judge, jury, and executioner. They were sent only when a threat was dire, when heresy had taken root and needed to be burned out. His name was Thorn, Inquisitor Thorn. He was a tall man, dressed in a severe black uniform. The silver emblem of the Inquisition was on his collar, a stylized eye that saw everything. His face was sharp, like it was carved from ice. His eyes were a pale, chilling blue. He moved with a quiet, predatory grace. His black boots made no sound on the polished floor. He was followed by 2 guards in gleaming silver armor. Their faces were hidden behind reflective visors. They were silent sentinels of his will. Thorn did not speak. He simply walked through the rows of consoles. His gaze swept over each cartographer. Each person he looked at flinched, as if his eyes could read their deepest thoughts, their most secret fears. You kept your head down. You stared at your screen with intense focus. You tried to control your breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds. Exhale for 8. A calming technique you learned as a child. It was not working. Your heart felt like a trapped bird. His shadow fell over your workstation. You froze. He was standing right behind you. You could feel the cold radiating from him, the scent of sterile air and something else. Something like old stone and dust. "Cartographer," he said. His voice was a low whisper, but it cut through the silence of the room like a knife. "Tell me about your work. Are there any anomalies to report? Any signals that deviate from the established charts?" You turned slowly in your chair to face him. His blue eyes were piercing. They seemed to look right through you, to see the forbidden chart hidden in your room, to see the ghost you became in the archives. You had to answer. The wrong word, the slightest hesitation, would be your end. You composed yourself. You summoned every bit of training you had, every lesson in obedience and control. "Inquisitor Thorn," you said. Your voice was steady, a small miracle. "My work is proceeding as normal. All signals are within expected parameters. The authorities' maps remain perfect." It was the perfect answer. The answer of a loyal citizen. The answer of someone with nothing to hide. For a moment, you thought he believed you. A flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes. Was it disappointment? He leaned closer. His face was just inches from yours. His voice dropped even lower. A conspiratorial hiss. "Perfection is a fragile illusion, Cartographer. It requires constant vigilance. The smallest crack can shatter the whole structure. I am here to find the cracks." He held your gaze for a long moment. It was a battle of wills. You refused to look away. You showed him nothing but calm obedience. Inside, you were screaming. Then he smiled. It was a cold, thin smile. It did not reach his eyes. It was the smile of a predator that had found a trail. "See that you continue your vigilant work," he said. He straightened up and moved on. The cold presence left with him. The moment he was gone, you let out a breath you did not realize you were holding. You had survived. For now. But you knew this was not the end. It was the beginning. Thorn did not believe you. He knew something was wrong on this station. He was a hunter, and he had caught your scent. He would not stop until he found the source of the heresy. He would not stop until he found you. The inspection was a pretense, a show of force to rattle the guilty, to make them make a mistake. The real investigation would be subtle. Thorn's agents would be everywhere, watching, listening, waiting for you to slip. You felt a strange sense of calm settle over you. The fear was still there, but it was now mixed with resolve. The game had changed. The stakes were higher, but you were still in it. You had a secret weapon, a map of impossible stars, and you had a ghost on your tail. Now, you had an inquisitor too. It was getting to be a crowded little party. You almost laughed. Almost. This was not the time for gallows humor. You had to move faster. You had to find out what the chart meant. Before Thorn found it first. Your life depended on it. Inquisitor Thorn's presence changed everything. Apex Station, once a place of predictable routine, was now a web of suspicion. Guards patrolled the corridors with new intensity. Random security checks became common. Conversations were held in hushed tones. Thorn was a patient hunter. He was dissecting the station's life, searching for any deviation from the norm, any sign of the heresy he was sent to purge. You felt his invisible net tightening around you. Time was running out. You needed to understand the chart, not just its location, but its origin. The feelings it gave you, the ancient loss, the desperate hope, were clues. They pointed to something in the past, something the authority wanted forgotten. You returned to your quarters that night. The risk of accessing the archives again was too great. Thorne's digital watchdogs would be everywhere, but you had the chart itself, the source code of the mystery. You pulled the dark glass relic from its hiding place. It hummed softly in your hands. The spiral of stars on its surface glowed with an internal light. You sat on your bed, the chart resting on your lap. You closed your eyes and focused. You let your mind connect with the strange energy of the object. You remembered the flood of feelings from the first time you touched it. This time, you did not just want to feel. You wanted to see. You wanted to understand. You pushed your consciousness toward the chart, an act of pure will. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the chart responded. The hum grew louder. The light intensified. An image bloomed in your mind. It was not a clear picture. It was a flicker of a memory, a ghost of a thought. You saw a ship, a vast, old ship, unlike any authority vessel. It was sleek and elegant, like a silver needle against the black velvet of space. You saw faces inside the ship, men and women with determined eyes. They were pioneers, explorers. They were not warriors. They were dreamers. They were searching for a new home, a new beginning. Then the name echoed in your mind. Not a word you heard, but a concept you understood. The first colony. The stories of the first colony were legend. Bedtime stories told to frighten children into obedience. They were our ancestors. The first humans to leave old Earth. The ones who settled this sector of the galaxy. The authorities' official history was vague. It said the first colony was lost. A tragic accident. A navigational error that sent them into an unstable star. A cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition, about reaching too far. But the whispers in the dark corners of the station told a different story. They said the colony was not lost. It was erased. That the authority, in its early days, had found them and had destroyed them. The reasons were never clear. A rivalry, a war of ideology, a genocide hidden by centuries of propaganda. Looking at the phantom image in your mind, you knew the whispers were true. The chart was not just a map. It was a relic of the first colony, a message from the dead, a testament to a history the authority had tried to bury. The spiral of stars on the chart. That was their destination, their home, a place called... The name was elusive, a ghost on the edge of your thoughts. It felt like hope, felt like sanctuary. The image faded. You were back in your small room. The chart was cool in your hands again. You opened your eyes. You now had a piece of the puzzle. The impossible stars were the home of the first colony, the place where our ancestors vanished. This changed everything. This was not just about a mapping anomaly anymore. This was about the very foundation of the authority, about a lie that had stood for centuries. To reveal this truth would not just be heresy, it would be revolution. No wonder Thorne was here. An artifact from the first colony was the most dangerous thing in the universe. It was proof of the authority's greatest crime. It was a seed of rebellion that could topple an empire. And it was in your hands. You felt the weight of that responsibility. It was heavier than any planet, more vast than any star system. You, a simple cartographer, held the key to unlocking the past, to exposing the truth. You also held a death sentence. Thorne was not just hunting a heretic. He was hunting a ghost, the ghost of the first colony. And he would stop at nothing to ensure it remained buried. You had a sudden, absurd thought.